On this episode of Clarity Digital Pod, I had the pleasure of speaking with Grant Johnson, a seasoned CMO and partner at Chief Outsiders. With a marketing track record that spans startups to enterprise acquisitions, including companies bought by Microsoft and IBM, Grant brings battle-tested insights into what actually works when it comes to brand building, demand generation, and proving marketing's impact on the bottom line. Grant now works as a fractional CMO, helping companies scale faster and smarter without the overhead of a full-time executive. In our conversation, we dug into why brand matters more than ever in today's AI-driven marketing world, and how his frameworks for measuring brand impact and marketing performance can help marketers defend and grow their budgets, even when under pressure from the C-suite. All right, welcome to another session of Clarity Digital Pod. Today I have my guest, Mr. Grant Johnson, a very seasoned CMO from Chief Outsiders. Welcome, Grant.
Hey, Al, it's great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time. I know you're busy. I appreciate your time. If you don't mind introducing yourself for our audience, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm a tech exec, and I've spent my career helping companies scale faster and more profitably. I've been fortunate to have 7 of my companies that I've been part of acquired. I've done everything from startups, a company called Frontbridge that was acquired by Microsoft, and part of a larger company, FileNet, acquired by IBM. So I've been acquired by some pretty large companies, and I've acquired 21 companies. Now I focus on fractional chief marketing officer, where I come in from 1 or 3, 4 days a week and help companies boost their marketing capability and performance, and sometimes help them find a head of marketing and then help the next client.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Fractional marketing, before we get into our topic, just fractional CMO seems to be a thing these days. I see a lot of demand for fractional CMOs. And you work for yourself, or you work for another agency?
I work with Chief Outsiders. We're probably the largest. There's over 100 CMOs. Now, some are B2C or B2B, like myself, and some may specialize in life science or Gen AI or some retail business or wine. We have someone running winery as a fractional. And it seems to be growing. It's a low risk. You bring a battle-tested veteran like myself or one of my 100 peers at Chief Outsiders. And because of our experience, we can hit the ground running and make an immediate impact, find some quick wins, put some points on the board, and work with the team collaboratively and not be weighed down by too many meetings. We're there to make things happen.
Yeah, it's very efficient. You don't have to have someone expensive on a payroll too. Just
exactly.
Few months,
you have more flexibility. Exactly.
100%. Cool. Thank you for that. You maintain a nice blog. There's an article that stood out. There's a lot of good content there, but there's an article that stood out for me because I deal with this all the time as an agency owner. I see a lot of, especially in this economy where we are like more of a, where everybody wants that revenue coming in. I see a lot of CMOs are being forced to focus less on brand and more on performance and creating demand. And you have an article about how brand drives demand. And that I really like that article because it wasn't just opinion. It was, you put some data and some case studies behind it. If you don't mind just explaining what that means, just give us a quick summary of that article. Like what is it you're trying to cover? And then we can elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I will say that there's no one magic wand. A lot of times marketers come in, whether they're existing or new leader comes in and says, turn on the faucet, turn it on to make it rain leads or whatever the term is. And the reason there's been a lot of discussion around what's happening with the disruption with Gen AI, LLMs, and AEOs, and how this impacts everything from SEO to PPC and performance marketing. And it's getting harder to get the kind of returns that used to be. And there's AI overviews, of course, that keeps people from going to your site as well. And so I've always been a believer in brand as a key differentiator, whether you're the market leader or you're an industry disruptor. And what's important about brand driving demand at a high level is, yes, I built a framework that you can measure it, But I think you have to buy in philosophically, intellectually first that we all will do whatever analysis on features, benefits, business value delivered, why one platform or another, but it's the people, it's the brand, it's the personality that you're interacting with. You're buying from people. Yes, it's a company. And so having that brand differentiation, it makes a difference. And it also matters because in tech, platforms are replaced every 4 to 5 years. Yeah, there are some
Yeah.
exceptions. And so if you break that down, 95% of your target market is not going to buy this quarter. They may buy 1 quarter from now or 10 quarters from now. And so you want a predisposition. They're aware of you. They know what you do, what you stand for. You might be a solution when they have a need. And so that's how brand can drive demand, because even if you had the most targeted campaign, if somebody's not in the market, they're not going to open, click, visit your site, fill out a form, or interact with somebody who dials them on a speed dial or connects with them through some other social media, LinkedIn, and so forth. So at a very high level, I believe that building the brand is something you do daily, like creating demand daily. And over time, that investment creates brand equity. And I came up with a framework that one of the companies where I was CMO, where the CEO wanted to track. So I put in a 2-year tracking study, and that's included in my site's called, it's CMO Mentor. Pretty simple, but I've got that article, as you noted, Al, and several others that, certainly that one tracked the impact of brand investments on demand over time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the LLMs and AEO and all that stuff. I actually have firsthand data that how a stronger brand performs better in LLM search, because a lot of people obviously are going to ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity, whatever tool they use to perform search. They're bypassing the traditional search engines like Google, and they're just asking the questions there. And if you don't have a brand within your field, you may not show up in those results, even though you may have done everything else. Like your technical SEO is in place, your content is in place, but if you don't have the brand equity, like you mentioned, you may not show up in the answer. So yeah, the brand seems to be also a thing that LLMs, AI looks at to prioritize answers. So that's very interesting stuff. But we're looking at marketing in the bigger picture. And time, I have had to, when I was in-house and now as an agency, we have had to pivot our campaigns. Like, for example, let's give you an example. We have, for a client, we were running programmatic ads, and it was high funnel, just getting people to know the brand. It didn't convert based on last click attribution as much as it should. But I believed that was still very valuable, because when I looked at some of the what I call micro conversions, some of the events, people were doing stuff on the events. They were clicking around and adding stuff to the shopping cart, but they didn't quite buy. So I was like, you know what? Now they know the brand. This is e-commerce. Now we can retarget them. We can get them to the newsletters. We can focus on SEO. So next time they're searching, we're going to come up. They're more likely to convert. But it's really hard to put numbers on that type of philosophical recommendations. I know your focus is B2B, so let's just talk about that measurement framework, if you don't mind, because I think that would solve a lot of these pain points that we marketers have.
Yeah, so I came up with a brand measurement framework, and I tracked over this 2-year period, and I always try to make things very simple and easy to understand, so every level of audience, of stakeholder, can go with you on this journey. And you can look at it 3 components of a brand measurement framework. You can always add more and you can get more sophisticated, but this was really what worked for me. And there's 3 broad areas of awareness, perception, and preference. And so I have within those what I call performance indicators. And so for awareness, your reach, how within your target market, whether it's physical or digital, what's your reach, what's your share of voice, how do you compare against your key competitors? When somebody goes to an LLM, who comes up first, second, third, and however they're trying to find you through a traditional search or the modern way. Perceptions, the sentiment somebody may have, their association, what are you known for? And then preference is the engagement and the customer loyalty. And probably this area of preference, you don't have preference until you have awareness, right? It's the old ADA formula from traditional advertising. You have to have that awareness. However, really when brand and demand meet most successfully, in my view, is when the prospects in the buying time frame, and there's a predisposition because they're aware of who you are. Oh, I'm going to open this email from Al's from Clarity Digital because I've dealt with them before. I know somebody else who's worked with them before. And then when it's time for renewal, most of the business I work mostly with subscription businesses, SaaS and so forth. And so you'll have, whether your initial term is 2 years or 3 years, so you'll have a renewal. And what's the propensity to renew, or the likelihood to churn, the revenue at risk. And so the brand helps you. And so in order to do this, and you can do it with a simple Google sheet, you don't need fancy programming to do it, but you have to get a baseline and you have to be able to measure things. And so I work with clients on setting their baseline, and I've got one SaaS client at like $20 million run rate, and they didn't want to track all 12 metrics. They just wanted to track 4. So we figured out what are the 4 that are most leading indicators or lagging indicators, things like web vitality and overall health of the web, and their social media follower, because obviously if more people are following your innovation, more likely they might respond to you. So those are just a couple examples. But what I did over a period of time is I had a uniform brand investment, mostly was in demand, but by tracking these variables, these performance indicators, was able to show 50% lift in demand by investing in brand consistently and having brand be an integral element to every demand campaign. It's not just we have a better mousetrap. It's like we're easier to do business with, and you'll like the way we work as much as how our services or products work. And so that's how I've approached it.
This is good stuff. I have a story to tell you. I used to work for this real estate listing company. I don't want to mention their name because I don't want to get in trouble. This is about 10 years ago. And I was running their SEO and SEM campaigns. And it was a smaller one, but they did good within their own niche. It was B2B to C. Customers could be B2B, real estate investors, but it could also be consumers. And I was in charge of search, SEO, and paid search. And our SEO was obviously slowly, organically improving. They were fine with that. Our SEM wasn't quite converting the way they wanted to convert, but I still felt like they should keep it going because it was creating an awareness. And when my boss, and I'm just going to tell you his first name, David, came to me, hey, we've tried landing pages, we've tried whatever you recommended us. We even got a second Google Ads person to come and audit my work to make sure that I didn't miss anything as a consultant. So we've done whatever we can do. I don't think Google Ads, search ads is for us. We're going to pause it. I'm like, no, don't do that. You can reduce a little bit, but it's still doing a lot of good. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's getting people to know our brand. It's getting people to know that we exist, especially on the non-branded terms. Yes, we're not getting the return on ad spend that we want, but it's getting people in the funnel. They're like, no, we're going to stop it. This is not this. We don't have money for that kind of thing. And I kid you not, literally 3 months later, that person was fired because they came and said, why are we getting less and less leads from organic? And they also had like affiliate marketing and stuff like that. And I told them this story. I'm like, look, we had a paid search program that wasn't the ROI wasn't that great immediately, but I felt, and just looking at Google Analytics, looking at the engagement, I felt like it was still adding value and getting people to know us. And this person, David, paused, and then they brought in David in, and then next thing I know, a couple of weeks later, he was gone. Yeah, brand is because in non-branded terms, we're getting people to our website to see our logo, to see our offerings, and then that's really unfortunate that a lot of CMOs think that way, but I think the CMOs think that way because they're groomed to think that way. They're often under a lot of pressures from CEOs and CFOs to bring in dollars right now. So how does your framework deal with that? How do you deal with executives that are so lower funnel, bottom line focused?
Yeah, we started with brand, and I believe, Al, we're pivoting a little bit more to the overall demand and the health of your demand generation and engine. And I actually have an expanded framework called Marketing Performance Index. That's also
I would love
nice.
to get that. I would love to see that.
But I'll give you a high level overview and how it answers that question. And it's also something that you want to measure over time. But essentially what I did with the marketing performance index, it was to address the question that heads of marketing CMOs get is what's your contribution and can you prove the value of marketing? And similar to the brand, the marketing measurement index of market performance, it looks at your market presence, your brand strength, and your pipeline health. So again, 3 areas.
Yeah.
And it takes components, measures, there's 24 metrics in it. But you can do it, again, you can just pick 6. What are the indicators of whether you're growing or not? And I'll just talk about pipeline health just to shine a light on how you answer that question. And pipeline health, it's kind of your growth of your organic inbound and your website and your conversion numbers. If you're 10x somebody, but you're 1/20th the conversion, it doesn't really matter, right? So you have to have that, and you have to get a return on every dollar invested. I like a 5-to-1 model. So if you invest 10,000 or 100,000, you're going to create 500,000 for the 100,000 in bookings. You go to the CFO and said, look, you give me another 100,000, I'll get another 500,000 bookings. So, well, if you give me 50, I'll get 250. So you prove that over time. And then, the pipeline health it's both the pipeline, but it's also the progression. And if the sales team, if you can get whatever you call them, sales accepted leads into sales qualified opportunities, if you convert enough of those and they close at the right velocity, the right value, and the right volume, those 3 V's, then you got a healthy pipeline. And whether your multiple is 2x or 5x, and a lot depends on your competitive positioning and your effectiveness of sales discipline and progression closing practices. But that's a way where with this performance index, it's compared against industry benchmarks about how this is available from a company called benchmarker.ai. Anybody can find them and you can download it.
I was going to ask you, where do you get this stuff?
Benchmarker.ai. And I added my own. I've created 20 billion in pipeline over the years. So I added my own sort of logic, talked about 20 other CMOs like myself and said, hey, what do you think of this multiple, this percentage growth is what is, and it's simple. I can do it in about an hour for any company. It pops out a good, better, best, green, yellow, red, a scale of 1 to 100. If you're below 60, you got a D minus. Above 90, you got an A. You should probably get a raise. Almost no one's gotten above 90 in the 50 that I've done. But I think that's the broader picture is a marketing performance index. And you pick the metrics that you can get the CEO, the CFO, the CRO, maybe even the board or investors to agree on. And because the problem that happens in marketing a lot of times as your journey continues at a company is the numbers change, the expectations change. So you're always managing, hey, if I got to reduce budget by 20% and headcount by 20%, I'm not going to be able to increase output by 40%. Maybe I can get 20. So anyway, that's a bit of an overview. There's more, of course, on the website, but that's how I address that challenge to a CMO.
Good stuff. And I think the one thing I've noticed, even within being an agency guy, a CEO, SEM, paid social person, running, that's what we do. So teaching and evangelism is always often helps. I've been able to persuade my clients to take a different approach to things. It's just a matter of how you go about it. And I think in my case, it's always been, they love to see numbers. They love to see data. They love to see charts. If you just say, I'm saying I have 20 years of experience, this is what you have to do, that's probably not going to fly too well. But if you provide some sort of deck that has numbers and charts, I even, on those micro conversions that I mentioned earlier, I even put a dollar value on it. And a lot of times I'm wrong. Like it's an estimate, but I'm like, hey, we got a new newsletter sign up. I'm attributing $5 to this but anyhow, that's good stuff. Thank you. As I was reading your blog post, you mentioned something about pipeline insurance, citing John Miller's framework. What does it mean? If you could, and I'm reading my notes, what are some of the things on a court when CMOs under a lot of pressure? How do you present that to the board or to the stakeholders?
If you could clarify, I'm not sure, how do I present the numbers to the stakeholders?
Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the pipeline insurance, the term that I saw.
John, pipeline insurance. Look, you can, with the infinite dollars, you can create infinite pipeline. Nobody has that as an option, right? And so the reason I created the market performance index with 3 key elements, presence, brand strength, and pipeline health, is like at some point there's going to be a decision made, right? And if you don't have the reach and you're working harder to get people to take your call, notice your ad, engage with your newsletter or website or webinar, right? So, that's going to take more effort and dollars to get the connection. And the same thing with your brand strength. If people don't know who you are and they haven't interacted with you, you don't have customers that are singing your praises on social media, for example, case studies, webinars, in-person events, industry trade shows. By the time you get to the battlefield, the engagement for an opportunity to win, to compete, to win, is you don't have a lot of insurance because they don't know who you are and they know somebody better. And people tend to go with what they trust, what they know. And that's where the insurance comes in, is that your pipeline will convert. And I've seen some, whether it's a CEO or a board, say, well, you've got this other company and they're converting at 2x. What's their value prop? What's their offering? How complex is it? And I had one investor, won't mention the company, but they sold software for you can track how much of your physical storage unit is rented out. If you're renting out a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 20, and there's a piece of software, like that's simple software. And if you're selling a complex enterprise-wide solution that cuts across the fabric of your infrastructure that has a buying committee of 10 to 15 people, you're comparing Earth and Mars. It's like they're on different planets, but you can always get better. And that's why if you publish the numbers and you get agreement on, okay, I had a CEO say, I've got to get 30% better. I said, great. How about if I went 5% better a month? I might get 60% better in a year. Can I break it down by monthly improvement? I can't wave the wand. And so you have to sometimes clarify the expectation and what your team and your budget will allow you to, in the industry, the competitive industry, allow you to deliver over time, but always aim to make it an objective conversation so you can be measured in a fair manner.
Amazing. Good stuff. So this is all good stuff. I want to pivot our conversation toward AI. You mentioned something about AI. How do you, as this fractional CMO, that you're trying to connect demand to a brand to demand and also get everybody on board, how do you use AI and how do you get your team to use AI?
Yeah, Al, it's something that every marketer is grappling with, and it's changing so fast. And
Ever changing it for sure.
Yeah, and there's a couple things that I do. First of all, Chief Outsiders, we have our own operating system for delivering outcomes to our clients. It's our practice management software. And we have built in several AIs. We've got Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT. And so, like, for example, I've got a project that's 4 months and it has 15 deliverables. And so I write this through Lovable. I write this prompt that is, okay, here's the current feed in the current client situation. Here's the challenges, the areas for improvement. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. Orchestrate the best sequence and an optimal strategy. And so that you get I had a 15-page output on that prompt. And so now it's helping us for the next few months try to sequence in the effort. So now you break that down to what does the demand gen manager do? What does the creative director do? What does the content manager do? And they each need to adopt some tool. Some companies, Gemini is the platform, some it's chat, whatever it might be. You want to keep it contained within your enterprise account and try to iterate, improve, and experiment and adapt, right? And those are the concepts, the tenets for continuous improvement. And you have to be willing to take some small bets, make some mistakes, but save part of your budget for experimentation, whether it's tools or it's programs, and try to skill up. Now, there's a lot of experts out there. I know a number of them who that's all they do is help companies get prepared. But there's a lot of tools that you can help yourself get next level. What I find is the best, I've done a few workshops. One of the things we offer Chief Outsiders, 2 4-hour one-day workshop. You take your team of 10 marketers, let's say, and you work on an integrated campaign. And so each person is using AI. Could be Canva, could be Chat, could be Clay. You're using part of the AI to orchestrate the campaign, to automate. Any time you can automate work, even if you're not all the way to agentic AI, you're still automating workflow. It's going to save some of the manual, tedious, time-consuming tasks. And then you have more time to create, to ideate, and to iterate. So that's my recommendation. Just start today, wherever you are in your journey, and just try to have a goal like I'm a tennis player, and I've competed nationally, and I want to get to this next level. I want to beat this next person, and I'm not going to do it overnight. So maybe I get my serve better 1 month, and then my backhand better another month, and my anticipation of drop shot, because I can see the person's going to do a Carlos on me, right? You just have to have that plan, and I think it can be scary, honestly, to think about how complex it can get, but if work as a team, take on a project, and that way you can see how collectively you can move the needle.
You look like a tennis player. Sorry.
I'm glad I do.
Yeah, you really do. Because my cousins, my uncle, they all play tennis semi-pro. And
wow.
there's a special look to you guys. I just don't know how to explain it. That's awesome. Good for you. Do you do pickleball at all or no? Just
I do. I
yeah.
played in. My son's also a tennis player. He's a senior in college.
Yeah.
And we did a charity tournament. I like pickleball. I prefer the chess analogy of tennis, where you really have to construct the court, the geometry of the court, the person's speed, and their tendencies, if you will, and try to leverage your competitive advantage if you can figure out one.
Yeah, I have a strong forehand or when I played, but my backhand never. I was always two-handed. So
well, that's all right. You can always work on it. And
yeah.
Look, I think any sport that is in studies, important for all listeners, not just all about technology and everything, is that anything that involves hand-eye coordination, could be badminton, and it is good for your brain and your body. And that's what's great about the sports, that racket sports or things like that.
It's all holistic. Yeah, 100%. So cool. I think I want to, since we're running out of time, I want to conclude this podcast with asking you a couple of personal questions. But before I do, maybe you want to recap what is it you do, what kind of services you offer, where people can find you.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. Yes, Grant Johnson. You can find me at grantyjohnson@gmail. That's my LinkedIn. You can find me on Chief Outsider's website. You can find me the CMO mentor. I still mentor folks, heads of marketing, just whether it's a month or a month-to-month assignment. And that's probably the best way to be in touch with me through simple. My website has an email link, or just my grantyjohnson1@gmail. It's an easy way to get in touch with me, and happy to connect.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Time to ask you a couple of non-work related questions. One you already answered, and when you're not working, you're playing tennis. Who's your favorite tennis player of all time?
That's a tough one but I'd
probably
pick Nadal, because I do speak Spanish, which helps, but he's just fierce. He played not every match, not every game, every point like it was the only point that mattered. And look, from Agassi to Sampras to Federer to Djokovic to the modern marvels, Alcaraz and Sinner, they're all great players, but Nadal was my favorite. I got to meet him in person at the BNP Paribas Indian Wells, and that was a highlight. Such a humble guy for his level of greatness.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like him a lot. I like Agassi too, because I'm Persian and his dad is Persian. Yeah, so I like him too. From Iran, I liked him. But yeah, there's a lot of good tennis players. I really enjoy watching it. Cool. And then obviously, when you're not playing tennis, when you're not working, what else do you like to do?
I actually like going down when the weather's nice. I like go down to the beach. I'll do just runs along the beach. I'm in San Clemente, so I can run to the pier and back. That's fun.
Yeah, I keep forgetting we're very local.
Yeah, that's right. Or I could go bodyboarding or something like that. And I like to cook. It turns out that something I took up on the weekends when I had time. And of my 3 kids, one of them is a chef. I don't know if you ever go to Nep Cafe, the Key Concepts. They have 9 restaurants in Orange County. And so he's a chef there. And so he's coming over tonight. We're going to cook something where my wife and I are excited. We're mostly empty nesters here. But so, yeah, just enjoy food and company and family, that kind of thing.
Cool. Awesome. All right. My last question is probably the little bit weird one. If you could be a superhero from a comic or comic book or movie, which one would you be and why?
I would be Iron Man, because it's a character for our times to some extent. It's a real man that has real vulnerabilities, but leverages technologies to do good in the world or to fight bad.
Yeah.
And I can't say I've seen all the movies, so you can't quiz me on what happened to Iron Man 3 or 14. But that would be my superhero.
Good answer. Appreciate it. Grant, it's been amazing. I really benefited from this. I hope our audience do. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for coming, and have yourself a great weekend.
You too, and thanks again for having me. All the best to you, your family, and your business. Look forward
Thank
to
you.
keeping in touch, and stay healthy and be well.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good one.
All right, bye now.
Bye.